in the Netherlands, in Western societies, in England, there were thousands of women like this. And what happened was that Muslims had to deal with this issue, because in the Western context, you don't have Gemeinschaft pressure that you would have in your own home country. So you don't have brothers that would kill you, so, okay, to protect their sister, their daughter. So husbands would do all these things. You don't have the community's protection, this communal Gemeinschaft protection. And when the poor woman goes to the court, to the English judge, religiously blind English law and English judge would say that, what are you talking about? What divorce? I mean, I already divorced you. What are you talking about? I cannot divorce you twice. You are already divorced. Because in the eyes of the English law, the marriage has been already dissolved. So that's a great trouble. So while the English law is trying to protect the woman, actually, in this case, you see that the English law fails Muslim women. Similar for the Jewish law, and Jewish law is much more complicated. In this case, the husband has to write an official divorce paper. It's a religious paper as well, and it's complicated. So in the Jewish case, joking about divorce is not a divorce, or official divorce is not a religious divorce at the same time. So may God help a Jewish woman. I mean, their situation is much more difficult. Because, as I said, in the Muslim case, the official divorce also is a religious divorce, so not a problem. To solve this problem, Muslims started establishing unofficial Sharia courts. If you watch Fox News in the United States, this is what you would get, or right-wing Islamophobic TV channels or newspapers in England, Sharia courts amputating the arms and chopping the heads of the people. No, these Sharia courts, they are not there to chop the heads of the, you have the security services, come on, they cannot do this anyway. So they are simply fear-mongering, these Islamophobes. So it was a reaction to this social problem that involved thousands of poor women. So starting from 1982, I'll be finishing in 5 or 6 minutes. So starting from 1982, these unofficial Islamic courts, Sharia courts, to use a more frightful expression, Sharia, wow, with their beards and their guns. Of course, they don't have guns anyway, but beards are more dangerous than guns anyway. So they established these courts, unofficial courts. And in 1996, there was, of course, the English common law did not care, because as long as you are not doing anything against the law, you don't have to be a law to know that you are allowed to do it, because law is not banning something, then you can do it. And what these courts were doing, they were actually divorcing people who were already divorced. Okay, so the law wouldn't care about it. Other than the Islamophobes, nobody would care about it anyway. So they established this course, and with the 1996 Arbitration Act, actually this alternative dispute resolution has become widespread. So this alternative dispute resolution is not only about religious laws, it's about business transactions and everything. This is a cheaper method of solving your problem. So the law tells you that, okay, if you go to an unofficial court, a company, a trusted person with moral authority in your community, and if you both parties to the litigation, both parties to the problem, agree that he can decide this case, your case, then this is applicable. As long as both parties agree with their free consent, then the English law doesn't matter, because the judges will be relieved of extra duties, and then the burden on the legal system will be lightened, so that's good. So according to this arbitration law, you can have these arbitration tribunals that are completely civilian, that are completely unofficial. And as I said, it is not about civilian issues. And you have international arbitration courts as well that are also unofficial, and billions of US dollars are decided in these courts. Anyway, so this is perfectly legal. And actually, as I said, what these people were doing actually repetitive of the official law. So they were, mainly speaking, divorcing Muslim women who were already divorced by the official court, but it provides a kind of psychological satisfaction. Why? Because you have the beardy guy with his turban, and he says that yes, wallahi, you are divorced, and then she's relieved, okay? And not just only herself, think about the community. In most cases they are illiterate and so on, so they wouldn't be blaming her if she goes and marries to someone else that you are committing adultery, zina, this is a sin. Nobody would say this because the bearded guy said that now, okay, you are free to go and get married again. So this is, you can imagine that this is a huge psychological satisfaction and relief. But that's not it. The unofficial Muslim courts, according to a study by Civitas, a British think tank, in 2009, I don't have today's figures, sorry about that. In 2009, there were 85 Sharia courts in England, 85 unofficial Sharia courts in England, and they would deal with almost all civil cases, with the exclusion of child custody cases. So the English law doesn't allow them to deal with the child custody issues, which is sensitive. But other than this, they also look at some business transactions, but mainly speaking, marriage and divorce issues. So there are some cases, let me give you just one example. In a Pakistani couple's case, British Pakistani couple's case, the husband deserts his wife and he goes back to Pakistan. And he's been staying there for 3 years without sending any money, without saying anything, and so on. And then the poor wife, decides to go to this unofficial court. And then the unofficial court phones the husband, and they establish the situation that yes, she's telling the truth. They listen to the witnesses, and then they say that okay, he is no longer a husband, Islamically speaking, for you. Then yes, you are now religiously divorced. So these things can take place. What about the legal enforcement of the decisions? In 2002, with the new law, the Divorce Marriage, Religious Marriages Act in 2002, the state made a new amendment to help these Jewish and Muslim wives, and they said that, and this actually caused furor among the right-wing people, anti-immigrant people and Islamophobes and so on. They said that the British courts are now recognizing Sharia. They are also applying Sharia in our land, and this is very dangerous and so on. Actually, what happened was that because they took into account the miserable condition of the these wives that suffered from these limping marriages, officially married and unofficially not married and so on, the new law in 2002 said that a court can delay to grant the divorce until both parties agree on the religious divorce. So they are not applying the religious law here, but what they do, they show an awareness of the socio-legal reality, what actually happens in the field, religiously speaking, okay? So the law says that a judge would ask to a couple that if they also get their religious divorce done, okay? And after both parties say that, okay, because sometimes women also do these blackmail things and so on, especially in the Jewish cases, not in Muslim cases, because as I said, in a Muslim case, husband said, okay, I divorced you, that would be it. But in the Jewish case, if the wife refuses to receive the written divorce document, she is not divorced. So the husband is trying to give it, but she's not taking it, and then they are not divorced. So sometimes women also do this for blackmail and other purposes. So the judge, according to the 2002 law, would ask the partners, okay, where is your Sharia divorce? Okay, to put it caricaturistically. So where is your Sharia divorce? And this is what the others are saying, that English courts are applying Sharia, but that's it actually. I mean, this is not according to actually any law, against any law. So that's the case in Turkey, in England at the moment. So showing that actually the English law, and let me finish with this one, showing that the English law also has recognized that legal pluralism exists, Muslim legal pluralism exists in the British soil, and then the courts have to recognize this fact to a certain extent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your clear expose. I don't know if there are any questions or remarks or comments. There's one thing that is a detail that I didn't understand it well, but do you say that in Great Britain, the Imam alone can, because that's not what happens in Belgium, can take the official position and can say, because in Belgium first you have to go to the municipality, if I am right, yeah, till now, for your marriage, and then afterwards you can go to the church. But the church alone cannot officially, no? Sorry, like that, eh? And if I understand you well, in England, the Imam can take the position of the mayor.
No, that's the same. So what happens is, of course, you go to the official municipality so that they will check if there are impediments to your marriage, but then you decide about the venue of your solemnization of your marriage, similar to the church. So previously the churches were the only alternative to the official marriage places, church. Now mosques are also added to this, so similar to church, after the authorities say that now you are allowed to marry, you can do it at a, at a mosque.
That's the Belgian situation.
But then Imam would give you the official registration and so on. But for instance, in Turkey, this is unimaginable. If a politician says this, for instance, in Turkey, in today's Turkey, his party would be shut down by the Constitutional Court because this is against the secular fundamentals of the Turkish state.
Well, so you are a very laic state, you are a very laic state in Turkey, you know. Okay, good. More than we are, eh? Yeah. Okay, any questions? A lot of women here, so they should have some particular questions on how to do it. To divorce.
We could have objections, but as he called idiot husbands, so there is no objection for that.
You have a question? You want to divorce? No. Okay, good.
Thanks, Scott, no.
Yeah? Is this, I remember that the bishop of the Anglican Church, Rowan Williams, was it about this issue also? That, what was his position? He wanted to make it official? Or why was this? Because he was criticized a lot, I know, for this.
I mean, what he said was hijacked by the Islamophobes in the country, unfortunately. Maybe he wasn't very clear on his position, but this position was repeated a few years ago by the Justice Minister of England and or United Kingdom. So as long as something is not against the English law, such as you are trying to chop the hand of your son, nobody will do it, but let's assume that. Then English law, of course, wouldn't recognize this, but as long as this is not against the English law, Rowan Williams was saying that the courts take into account that some people might have different cultures, different religious sensitivities, so we shouldn't apply one monocultural assumption on everyone and expect that they would always follow our ways. As long as they respect the law of the land, then they must be allowed to have these different variations, even when it comes to law. So the example about the recognition, for instance, 2002, this law was legislated after years, decades of pressure and lobbying by the Jewish communities and Muslim communities, so that to protect the woman. But until that time, for instance, the English law, as I tried to explain, the English law would say that, okay, you are divorced. You might be a Jewish lady or Muslim lady, you are divorced, go to hell, and I cannot help you. But with the 2002 law, now if the lady says that, look, I don't have my Sharia divorce, then the judge will say, oh, this is serious, so please go and get your Sharia divorce first and then come back to me. Then the judge would not say, what are you talking about, Osama bin Laden? I mean, are you a terrorist? No, they won't say this. They would respect this, and they would say that, okay, this is your religious conviction, even though according to English law, this is not an impediment, but sociologically speaking, religiously speaking, this is a barrier, this might harm you, I take this into account, then I allow you to go and get this Sharia divorce or Jewish divorce, and after you do this, I will annul the marriage, I will dissolve the marriage. So you are taking into consideration this additional factor here, additional religious factor. Similar to something that you have 3 children. I mean, if you have children in a marriage, this would be different from a marriage that doesn't include any marriage. So the judge would take this into account. If they have a common property, common children, then dissolving this marriage would be much more complicated, isn't it? Similarly, here you are not taking a secular dimension, a mundane dimension into account, such as property or children. In this case, you are taking into account a psychological dimension or a religious dimension. So not much difference.
May I make it very concrete? If my religious dimension is much less expensive and takes much less time than the secular dimension, does it mean in the UK that I can propose my religious way of divorcing, for example, with both agreement, with the agreement of both?
Oh yes.
You understand what I mean?
Yes. So this is applied also. So similar to the other ADR mechanisms, alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, similar to other unofficial tribunals related to business, civil law, the same thing applies to religious divorces. So both parties go to a religious tribunal, Muslim religious tribunal, and gets a divorce, and it is consensual. Then the British court would apply it. Yes.
Because it can be interesting sometimes be religious.
So,
correct?
That's why, for instance, there are some cases